Sign the papers, Mom, Brian whispered, his voice cutting like a cold blade. My own son was threatening to ruin my reputation with my granddaughters if I didn't hand over my $1.5 million inheritance. Before I could even blink, he pocketed my car keys and told me my accounts were frozen. I'm no longer a guest at his Connecticut estate, I'm a prisoner. He thinks he's trapped a confused old woman, but he's forgotten my professional past. I've spent decades finding money people tried to hide. Stay with me to find out how I turned the tables, and don't forget to subscribe for more. The rosemary has gone sour in my mouth. I'm watching Brian's hand move across the sundae table like a predator closing on prey, slow, deliberate, and utterly certain of the kill. His palm lands on my wrist before my fingers can reach the clasp of my purse. The impact is controlled. No bruising. Nothing that would photograph well in a deposition. Just enough pressure to pin my hand flat against the mahogany, my silver rings digging into the underside of my knuckles. We aren't finished, Mother. The word mother comes out of his mouth like a corporate title. Not an endearment. A classification. A demographic. I feel the heat of his skin through the silk of my blouse, and the insult of it, the sheer physical presumption, makes something cold and sharp unfurl in my chest. But I don't flinch. I learned a long time ago that the first one to react loses the negotiation. I let my eyes travel from his white knuckles up to his face. The good son mask is cracking. The smile he wore through the roast beef and mashed potatoes has thinned into something surgical. His jaw is tight. There are fine stress lines around his mouth that weren't there at Christmas. He looks like a man who's been holding his breath underwater for too long, and now he's coming up for air, fast, desperate, and willing to drown anyone in his way. I keep my back straight. My posture is a rigid, vertical line of defiance. I have spent 40 years looking at better-dressed thieves than him across a balance sheet. He releases my wrist and slides a heavy, navy blue folder across the lace tablecloth. The paper rasps against the fabric, a dry, hostile sound. The folder lands in front of my water glass with a dull thud, and I see the gold-embossed lettering, Thornton Family Trust. I don't touch it. Brian leans back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin like he's posing for a LinkedIn photo. His steel blue eyes, my eyes, the ones I gave him, are hard and cold. He's rehearsed this. I can see it in the tilt of his head, the cadence of his breathing. This is a pitch he's made before, probably to creditors. 1.5 million, Grace. He uses my first name now. Not Mom. Not Mother. Grace. Like I'm a client. All of it. Liquidated and moved under my management by Monday morning. His breath smells like the expensive Cabernet Stacy poured with dinner, but underneath it, there's something sour. Desperation has a scent. I've smelled it across desks in windowless offices when men realized I'd found the hole in their books. He isn't asking for an inheritance. He's demanding a ransom for a life I spent 40 years building. I let the silence stretch. I smooth the napkin in my lap, a slow, deliberate gesture. My manicured nails catch the light from the chandelier. I make him wait. Then I speak, my voice calm and measured, the tone I used when I told a CPA his client was about to be audited. And if I decline? Brian's smile doesn't reach his eyes. I found the black ledger, Mom. The words hit like a fist to the solar plexus. For a moment, the room tilts. The chandelier above us seems to swing, though I know it hasn't moved. I feel the floor shift under my feet, the way it did the night I first opened that ledger in 1984 and saw the numbers that didn't add up, the municipal bonds that didn't exist, the beautiful, elegant fraud my husband had built brick by brick. The real one, Brian continues, his voice dropping to a conversational murmur, like he's discussing the weather. Dad was a genius, but he was sloppy. I found it in the attic, behind the Christmas decorations. All those forged municipal bonds. Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport. 40 years of wire transfers and shell corporations. It's all there. He pauses, letting the words settle like sediment in dirty water. If this goes to the authorities, Grace, the granddaughters lose everything. The school name, the legacy, the college funds, the future. It all burns. He leans forward, elbows on the table, and I see the cold, clinical logic of a man who has already done the math. He's using my own loyalty to a dead man's secrets as the knife to gut my autonomy. He thinks the shame will break me. He thinks I'll fold like a cheap card table under the weight of protecting my granddaughters from the truth. He's forgotten that I'm the one who balanced those books. I'm the one who kept the lie alive for 4 decades. I didn't do it out of love. I did it because I was good at it. I keep my face a mask of silver-white calm, but inside, I'm already running the numbers. How much does he know? How deep did he dig? Is this a bluff, or does he have copies? Before I can open my mouth, before I can even form the first word of a response, Brian's hand darts into my knitting bag. I keep it on the chair beside me, always. A large, floral tapestry tote with soft wool yarn spilling out the top, a half-finished cardigan for my youngest granddaughter folded inside. It's the prop of a harmless grandmother. Except it isn't. His fingers disappear into the yarn, and when they emerge, he's holding my car keys. The metallic jingle is obscene in the quiet dining room. He drops them into the pocket of his blazer with the practiced ease of a pickpocket, and the soft clink of metal against silk lining sounds like a prison door slamming shut. You're too stressed to drive, Grace. You've been forgetting things. I watch my independence vanish into his pocket. My heart is hammering against my ribs, a frantic, rhythmic thrum that I force into submission with a slow, deliberate inhale through my nose. 4 counts in. 4 counts hold. 4 counts out. The same breathing rhythm I used when I had to sit across from federal auditors and lie with a straight face. I need him to believe the fear has paralyzed my brain. So I let my shoulders sag. Just a fraction. I let my eyes go wide, the way a deer looks when it hears the snap of a branch in the woods. I don't speak. I let him see a woman who has just lost her escape route. Brian stands, smoothing the front of his blazer. He looks pleased with himself. Satisfied. Like he's just closed a deal. I've already spoken to the bank, he says, his voice dropping into a soothing, patronizing hum. The kind of voice you use with children and dementia patients. As your primary power of attorney, I've flagged the accounts. For your protection against elder fraud. The irony is a knife twisting in my gut. He has frozen my pension. My savings. The liquidated remains of the house I sold after my husband died. The life insurance payout I'd carefully invested in municipal bonds, real ones, this time, and dividend-paying stocks. He's locked me out of my own financial bloodstream. He's strip-mining me in broad daylight, using the very legal safety nets I helped him set up when he opened his firm. I am an accountant who has just been audited out of her own existence. I look down at my hands, resting on the edge of the table. I let them tremble. Just enough for him to see. Just enough to sell the illusion that I'm a fragile old woman who's lost control. But inside, I'm already building the ledger. Assets, 1 thumb drive, hidden in the seam of my knitting bag. 1 laptop in the guest house. 1 brain that has spent 30 years finding money people tried to hide. Liabilities. No car, no phone access, no liquid funds. The math doesn't add up for him. He just doesn't know it yet. Stacy appears in the archway like a stage actress hitting her mark. Her smile is wide and sharp, the kind of smile that doesn't touch the eyes. Her highlights are fresh, expensive, dimensional blonde that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She's wearing athleisure that costs more than my best wool coat, and her perfume, something citrus and aggressively cheerful, hits me like a chemical weapon. The guest house is all ready, Grace. Fresh linens, lavender on the pillow. I thought you'd be more comfortable there. More private. She hooks her arm through mine, her touch light but firm, like a nurse guiding a patient down a hospital corridor. She's steering me away from the table, away from Brian, away from the last remnants of the Sunday dinner that has turned into an ambush. She treats me like a porcelain doll with a cracked head. As we walk through the foyer, I see my reflection in the gilded mirror that hangs above the console table. A frail grandmother in a cashmere cardigan and pearls, being led to bed by her concerned daughter-in-law. My silver white hair is perfectly styled. My posture is still upright, but I let my steps shuffle just a fraction, dragging my feet slightly across the marble floor. I lean into her, playing the part. I let my breathing go shallow and fast, like I'm overwhelmed. "That's it, Grace," Stacy murmurs, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Just a little rest. Everything's going to be fine." I nod, letting my chin dip toward my chest. I make my eyes unfocused, staring at the floor. And all the while, I'm counting the steps from the main house to the guest house. 32. Gravel path. Motion sensor lights. A clear line of sight from Brian's home office window. The guest house door closes behind me, and the sound is final. Absolute. Then comes the work click. It's a soft, mechanical sound, barely audible, but I know what it is. An electronic deadbolt, engaged from the outside. The kind you install on Airbnb rentals to keep guests from wandering into private areas. I stand in the center of the room, my hands still at my sides, listening. I hear Stacy's footsteps retreating on the gravel path, the crisp click-click-click of her expensive sneakers fading into the distance. I hear the faint hum of the main house's HVAC system through the wall. I am 70 years old, and for the first time in my life, I am a prisoner in a house my own money built. The guest house is beautiful, of course. Floral wallpaper in soft pinks and creams. A queen-sized bed with a white duvet that looks like a cloud. A small cherry wood writing desk beneath the window. A flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. A kitchenette with a mini-fridge stocked with bottled water and yogurt. It smells like expensive lavender detergent and furniture polish. The air is thick with it, cloying and sweet, like someone is trying to cover up the scent of decay. I walk to the center of the room and close my eyes. I force my breathing back into the 4-count rhythm. I lower my heart rate. I push the panic down into a small, locked box at the base of my spine. This is not the time to feel. This is the time to think. I move to the window, the one that faces the back lawn and the wooded area beyond the property line. I pull back the heavy silk curtain, letting the afternoon light spill across the hardwood floor. I press my thumb against the window frame, testing. Screws. Freshly driven, zinc-coated screws through the tracks. I run my finger along the edge of the frame, feeling the smooth, rounded heads. Philip's head. Probably driven in this morning, while I was getting dressed for dinner. I move to the second window. Same thing. Screws through the tracks, rendering the window inoperable. I move to the third window, the one above the writing desk. Same. All of them are sealed. Brian didn't just lock the door. He prepared for a struggle. I run my hand over the smooth wood of the writing desk, my mind already shifting into the cold, methodical rhythm of a closing audit. I don't feel fear anymore. Fear is a luxury, and I can't afford it. I feel clarity. I am looking for the error in his calculation. The gap in his logic. The number that doesn't add up. I reach back into my knitting bag, the one Stacy placed on the chair by the door. I push past the soft wool, the half-finished cardigan, the bamboo needles still threaded with yarn. My fingers find the secret seam I stitched into the lining 6 months ago, back when I first started noticing the way Brian looked at my bank statements. The way he asked too many questions about my estate planning. I slip my fingers into the seam and pull. There, tucked against the plastic stiffener at the bottom of the bag, is the Kingston thumb drive. It's a small, black sliver of plastic, no bigger than my thumb. The edges are sharp, digging into the soft skin of my palm. I hold it up to the light, and the USB connector glints like a blade. It contains the mirror image of every file Brian thinks he's deleted. Every email, every transaction, every wire transfer he made in the last 18 months. I've been cloning his laptop remotely since April, using a script my husband taught me back when he was teaching me how to balance the books for his fraud. I haven't survived 40 years of deception by being unprepared for a betrayal. I slip the thumb drive into the pocket of my cardigan, feeling the weight of it settle against my hip. It is my only weapon. A digital ghost. A ledger of sins that Brian doesn't know I've kept. I sit at the small cherrywood desk and close my eyes. I force my breathing into a 4-count rhythm. In. Hold. Out. Hold. I lower my heart rate until the tremors in my hands vanish. I push the adrenaline out of my system, the way I used to before walking into a high-stakes audit. I replay the dinner conversation in my head, word for word. 1.5 million. Family trust. Monday morning. Margin calls. The granddaughters lose everything. Brian is over-leveraged. He's drowning. He needs the $1.5 million not for a trust, but to plug a hole in a sinking ship. His firm is bleeding money, and he's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes in the decimals. I start a mental ledger, the way I used to when I was working. Brian's assets. The Connecticut estate, mortgaged to the hilt, probably. His firm, failing, based on the margin calls he mentioned. His reputation, fragile, dependent on appearances. Brian's liabilities. The $1.5 million he needs immediately. The investors who are calling in their loans. The black ledger, which he now knows about, but hasn't reported. Why? The math doesn't add up for him. He's playing a short game. He needs the money now, which means he's out of time. And people who are out of time make errors. I stand before the vanity mirror in the small bathroom, adjusting my pearls. I practice the grace they expect to see. I let my jaw slacken, just slightly. I make my eyes go wide and watery, the way they do when someone is confused or frightened. I tilt my head to the left, just a fraction, the universal gesture of uncertainty. I practice forgetting words. I let my gaze drift, unfocused, as if I'm searching for something I can't quite remember. I practice the poker face of the senile. If they want a victim, I will give them a masterpiece of frailty. I will be the ghost in their machine, the glitch in their legal documentation, the unreliable witness who signs nothing that holds up in court. Behind the mask, the bookkeeper is awake. The auditor is watching. The woman who kept a criminal's books clean for 40 years is running the numbers. I adjust my pearls one last time and return to the main room. I open the laptop that's sitting on the writing desk. It's a guest house amenity, provided for entertainment. A sleek, silver MacBook with a sticky note on the keyboard, Wi-Fi password, Brian 1981. I click the Wi-Fi icon in the corner of the screen. Thornton_estate_guest. I type in the password. Birwan 1981. His birth year. Arrogant. Predictable. The connection bar turns solid green. I sit in the soft glow of the screen, the silver bob of my hair reflecting in the glass. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the laptop's fan. He thinks he's cut me off from the world. He thinks he's isolated me, stripped me of my agency, turned me into a dependent. But he's just given me a terminal into his own house. His own network. His own files. The silent audit has begun. By the time the sun rises, I will know exactly how much his soul is worth. 10:46 a.m. The numbers bleed across the screen like an autopsy report. I'm 3 hours into the digital incursion, and the blue light from the laptop has carved shadows under my eyes deep enough to hold water. My reflection in the darkened window looks like a corpse. Good. If Brian's cameras are watching, let him see a woman dissolving into her own confusion. But my fingers are steady on the trackpad, moving through his server with the precision of a surgeon opening a chest cavity. I don't look at his family photos. I don't care about the vacation snapshots from Turks and Caicos or the professionally staged portraits of the granddaughters in matching smock dresses. I look at his spreadsheets. I look at the pivot tables and the cash flow statements and the client investment portfolios that are bleeding red like arterial spray. 3 margin calls sit in his inbox, each one flagged with a bright red exclamation point. The subject lines are clinical, urgent, margin deficiency notice, account number 4782, final notice, liquidity required by March 15th, immediate action required, $500,000 shortfall. He's short $500,000 by the end of the month. Not 1.5 million. 500,000. Which means the rest, the remaining million, is profit. Greed layered on top of desperation. I mapped the connections between his personal accounts and the firm's holdings, tracing the leaks in the dam he's built. Wire transfers to offshore entities. Consulting fees, paid to shell corporations with addresses in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. Loans taken against client portfolios without their knowledge. The audit doesn't lie. My son is not a criminal mastermind. He's a mathematical failure wearing a bespoke suit. The door chime cuts through the silence like a scalpel. I don't have time to close the browser. I slam the laptop shut and shove it under the embroidered throw pillow on the armchair. My heart is hammering, but I force my face into the slack, unfocused expression I practiced in the mirror. Stacy enters without knocking. Of course she doesn't knock. Prisoners don't get privacy. She's carrying a velvet-lined jewelry box, the kind you get from high-end estate sales. Her smile is wide and synthetic, the smile of a QVC host selling cubic zirconia. Grace, dear, we should put your pearls and that lovely ring in the house safe. You know how forgetful people can be with valuables. She reaches for my hand before I can pull it away. Her touch is cold, reptilian. Her fingers close around my wrist, and she lifts my left hand, inspecting it like a jeweler appraising merchandise. She wants the collateral. I let my hand go limp and heavy, all the weight of dead flesh. I watch as she slides the gold wedding band off my finger. It's been there for 42 years. The skin underneath is pale, a thin white line of absence. She doesn't look at my face. She's looking at the ring, turning it in the light, calculating the resale value of 40 years of marriage. 18-karat gold. Simple band. No stones. Maybe $200 at a pawn shop. Enough to cover a caterer's deposit. She drops it into the jewelry box with a soft clink and snaps the lid shut. There. Much safer. She pats my hand, the gesture of a nurse sedating a patient, and turns to leave. I say nothing. I let my gaze drift to the window, unfocused and empty. But inside, I'm adding another line to the ledger, theft of personal property, witnessed, for 4:47 p.m. Brian follows her into the room, trailing a man I've never seen before. The man is in his late 50s, wearing a cheap gray suit that pulls at the shoulders and a tie that's slightly too wide for current fashion. He's carrying a leather briefcase with a notary seal embossed on the side in gold foil. My stomach drops. It's just an emergency temporary guardianship, Mom, Brian says, his voice smooth and reasonable, the tone of a man explaining a minor inconvenience. A safety net. Since you were so confused at dinner. He lays the petition on the cherrywood desk, right over the spot where I've hidden my handwritten notes under the blotter. The paper is thick, official. I can see the Connecticut Superior Court seal at the top, the dense blocks of legal text, the signature line at the bottom. He's moving faster than I anticipated. He's using the law to strip me of my personhood before I can even mount a defense. Before I can hire a lawyer. Before I can tell anyone what's happening. The notary stands beside the desk, hands folded, waiting. He doesn't look at me. He looks at Brian, then at the petition, then at his watch. This is a transaction to him. A 15-minute appointment between lunch and his next client. Brian speaks about me in the third person, as if I'm already a ghost haunting his guest house. She's been increasingly disoriented. Forgetting where she is. Accusing me of, well, paranoid delusions. I'm concerned for her safety. The notary nods, making a note on a yellow legal pad. I sit in the armchair, my hands folded in my lap, and I let my expression go soft and bewildered. I blink slowly, like I'm trying to remember where I am. Brian places a pen in my hand. It's a heavy, expensive pen. Mont Blanc. The kind you use to sign mortgages and trust documents. The weight of it in my palm is obscene. Just sign here, Mom. We'll take care of everything. I look at the paper. I look at the signature line. My hand shakes. Not with age, but with a controlled, rhythmic tremor I've practiced. I let the pen waver in my grip, the tip hovering above the page. I sign my name. But I drag the G into a jagged, uneven line, and I let the Thornton dissolve into an illegible scrawl that looks like a seismograph reading of an earthquake. The letters slope downward, off the signature line, bleeding into the paragraph of text below. It's so hard to see the lines, I whisper, my voice thin and reedy. I look at the wall instead of the paper, my gaze unfocused, staring at nothing. Brian exhales, a sound of pure, arrogant relief. He thinks he's won. He thinks he's just signed for a delivery, a package to be opened later and discarded. He has no idea he's just invited a Trojan horse into his legal fortress. A signature that's shaky, that illegible, that visibly incompetent will be Exhibit A when his guardianship petition falls apart in probate court. The notary stamps the document with a dull thud, and Brian shakes his hand, all smiles and gratitude. They leave, and the door locks behind them with the same soft whir click. I wait until their footsteps fade. Then I stand and begin a, confused, cleaning of the room. I move slowly, picking up invisible lint from the armchair. I straighten the throw pillows. I adjust the lampshade on the side table, tilting it at an odd angle like someone who's lost track of symmetry. And then I find it. In the smoke detector. I'm standing on the chair, reaching up to dust the ceiling trim with a tissue, when I see the tiny, unblinking glass eye. A pinhole camera, embedded in the white plastic casing of the detector. The lens is no bigger than a grain of rice, but I know the specs. Wireless. Motion activated. Streams directly to a smartphone app. Brian is watching the senile woman to ensure she stays in her role. I don't look directly at it. I don't let my expression change. I step down from the chair, smoothing my cardigan, and move to the armchair by the window. I pick up my knitting, the half-finished cardigan for my granddaughter, and I begin a slow, repetitive stitch. Knit. Purl. Knit. Purl. The rhythm is meditative, hypnotic. I keep my expression vacant, my eyes slightly unfocused, staring at the yarn in my lap. If he wants to watch a grandmother rot, I will give him a stellar performance. And while I knit, I'm counting. The camera's field of view covers the door, the bed, and the desk. But it doesn't cover the bathroom. And it doesn't cover the corner behind the armchair, where the angle is too steep. I have blind spots. I have room to maneuver. The next morning, the lawn erupts into chaos. I watch from behind the silk curtains as men in white catering shirts erect massive tents on the back lawn. The fabric snaps and billows in the Connecticut breeze, the aluminum poles clanging like wind chimes. There are at least a dozen workers, maybe more, hauling tables and chairs and crates of glassware from a white truck with Sterling Events emblazoned on the side. Brian is throwing a Hail Mary. The investor mixer. The last-ditch effort to woo Mr. Sterling and the other whales, to convince them to inject fresh capital into his failing firm before the margin calls come due. I watch him pace the lawn, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly with his free hand. He's wearing khakis and a polo shirt, the uniform of a man trying to look casual while his empire burns. This mixer is his stage. His final performance. But it will be my battlefield. The more witnesses he invites, the more devastating his fall will be. I start counting heads. Caterers. Bartenders. Valets. Investors. Spouses. Neighbors. 50 people, at least. 50 pairs of eyes. Perfect. In the afternoon, Stacy leaves a mail sorter bin in the mudroom while she's outside yelling at a caterer about the placement of the bar cart. I slip out of the guest house, moving slowly, my steps shuffling and uncertain. I clutch the doorframe like I need it for balance. If anyone is watching, I'm just a confused old woman taking a breath of air. The mudroom smells like wet dog and expensive detergent. The mail sorter bin is overflowing, catalogs, bills, real estate flyers. I flip through them quickly, my fingers moving with the speed of a decades-old filing system. And then I see it. A certified envelope. Thick. Official. The return address is from a law firm I don't recognize, Pembroke and Hastings, LLP. I tear it open, my hand steady now, the tremor gone. Certified intent to sell, 114 Maple Street, Hartford, Connecticut. My craftsman home. The house with the creaky third step that I always meant to fix. The garden with the heirloom roses I planted the year my husband died. The kitchen where I baked 40 years of birthday cakes and Thanksgiving pies. It's being liquidated. Closing date, March 30th. Buyer, Blue Marble Holdings, LLC. They aren't just taking my money. They are erasing my history. They are selling the physical architecture of my life to pay for a failing firm and a gambling addiction. The paper crinkles in my hand, a sharp, dry sound. My poker face nearly breaks. I feel the heat rising in my chest, the pressure behind my eyes. But I force it down, swallowing the rage like a pill. I fold the document and slip it into the waistband of my slacks, beneath my cardigan. Back in the guest house, I tunnel into the family trust account. The ledger reveals the truth in black and white, the numbers stark and unforgiving. Brian has already skimmed $200,000 from the trust. But he didn't put it into the firm. He didn't use it to pay down the margin calls. He moved it. I trace the wire transfers through a series of offshore accounts, first to a Delaware LLC, then to a shell corporation in Grand Cayman, then to a final destination that makes my blood run cold. Macau. A sportsbook called Golden Dragon Gaming. He's a gambler. He's throwing my retirement into a black hole of poker tables and roulette wheels and baccarat pits, chasing losses with more losses, doubling down on a hand that was already busted. Every click of the mouse is a new piece of evidence. Every transaction is another brick in the wall I'm building around him. I'm not just his mother anymore. I'm the forensic auditor who's going to dismantle his life, brick by brick, number by number. I find the listing on a commercial real estate portal late that night, the blue glow of the laptop screen turning my skin corpse pale. Sold, 114 Maple Street, Hartford, Connecticut. Buyer, Blue Marble Holdings, LLC. I run a quick search of the Connecticut Secretary of State Business Registry. Blue Marble Holdings. Registered agent, Brian Thornton. Business address, 47 Lakeview Drive, Greenwich, Connecticut. His address. His firm's address. He's selling my house to himself. It's a classic, clumsy embezzlement scheme. Sell the asset to a shell company you control, use the inflated sale price to create paper equity, then borrow against that equity to generate cash. He thinks he's being clever. He thinks he's pulled off a sophisticated financial maneuver. But he's left a trail of digital breadcrumbs a first-year forensic accounting intern could follow with their eyes closed. I screenshot the registry page. I save it to the thumb drive. I add it to the growing file labeled evidence, Brian Thornton financial fraud. The noose is tightening. The next morning, I execute phase 2 of my performance. Stacy brings my lunch on a tray, a sad little sandwich, carrot sticks, a cup of weak tea, and I let my face crumple into a mask of pathetic boredom. Stacy, I moan, my voice thin and pleading. I'm so bored. Could I please have my recipe cards from the kitchen? I wanted to write down the Bordeaux cake recipe for the girls. I make my eyes wide and watery, the gaze of a woman whose only remaining joy is baking. Stacy sighs, the sound of a woman burdened by the world's most tedious chore. Fine, Grace. You can come to the kitchen for 10 minutes while the caterers are setting up. But don't get in the way. She unlocks the door. The cage opens. I have 10 minutes to find the heart of the house. The kitchen smells like garlic and rosemary and the sharp, metallic scent of industrial cleaning spray. Caterers move through the space like ants, hauling trays of hors d'oeuvres and crates of champagne glasses. Stacy is outside, arguing with someone about the placement of the string lights. I stand at the counter, fumbling with my recipe cards, my hands trembling in the performance of frailty. But my eyes are sharp. My mind is recording. I watch the service entrance, the door that leads to the mudroom and the basement stairs. A caterer in a black apron enters, balancing a tray of canapés. He pauses at the keypad beside the door, punching in a code with practiced efficiency. 0-9-2-2. The girl's birthday. September 22nd. Brian is nothing if not sentimental about his passwords. I memorize the finger movements, the rhythm of the buttons. I commit it to muscle memory, the way I used to memorize account numbers. I tuck a small paring knife into the sleeve of my cardigan, not for violence, but for the server room door in the basement. The locked door with the cheap brass handle that I saw the last time I visited, back when I was still allowed access to the whole house. I have the keys to his kingdom now. I'm shuffling back toward the guest house, moving slowly, when I hear Brian's voice in the hallway. He's on the phone, his tone clipped and urgent. I press myself against the wall, hidden in the shadow of the doorframe. The psych eval is set for Tuesday morning, he says. Once she's committed, the guardianship becomes permanent, and we can close the blue marble deal. Sterling wants confirmation by Wednesday. Tuesday. I have 48 hours. The mixer is tomorrow night. My window is closing, and the stakes are no longer just my money. It's my sanity. My legal personhood. My ability to ever challenge what he's done. If I'm declared non compos mentis, every piece of evidence I've gathered becomes inadmissible. A crazy woman's paranoid delusions. I return to the guest house, moving with the slow, shuffling gait of defeat. I sit in my chair. I pick up my knitting. The plan is set. The audit is complete. Now, the execution begins. I turn the silver handles of the bathtub faucet to their maximum position. The water roars to life, a clean, violent sound that fills the small bathroom like a thunderstorm trapped in porcelain. I don't ease the flow. I don't test the temperature. I crank both handles until they won't turn anymore, until the water is hammering into the tub with enough force to rattle the fixtures. Then I crouch down and reach for the stack of documents Brian left on the side table, the family trust papers he wanted me to review. Heavy bond paper, embossed letterhead, the weight of institutional authority. I fold them into a tight, compact brick and jam them into the drain. The water hits the blockage and begins to rise immediately. It climbs the porcelain sides of the tub, sloshing over the curved lip, spilling onto the expensive lavender-scented bath mat. Within seconds, the water is spreading across the tile floor, seeping into the grout lines, darkening the expensive Egyptian cotton rugs. I watch it flood with the cold satisfaction of a demolition expert watching a controlled burn. Then I walk to the door and hammer on the wood with both fists, my knuckles striking the solid oak in a frantic, arrhythmic panic. Help! It's raining inside. The ceiling is leaking. Help me! My voice cracks into a high-pitched, shrill terror. I let it rise into a wail, the sound of a woman who has lost all sense of cause and effect. I hear the security guard's footsteps thud across the porch, heavy and fast. The lock clicks. The door swings open. He sees the water pooling in the hallway, the sodden rugs, the steam rising from the bathroom, and his face goes pale. The distraction is live. While the guard is on his knees, wrestling with the shut-off valves behind the toilet and cursing into his radio for backup, I slip out the back door. The Connecticut night air is sharp and cold, smelling of damp earth and wood smoke from a neighbor's fireplace. The sky is overcast, the moon hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. Perfect. No shadows to betray me. I stay low, moving along the edge of the boxwood hedges that line the pathway between the guest house and the main estate. My steps are silent, measured, the gait of a woman who knows exactly where the light doesn't reach. I've walked this property 100 times. I know where the motion sensor lights are mounted. I know the blind spots in the camera coverage. I know the gravel patches that crunch and the grass strips that stay silent. I reach the side service entrance, the door the caterers use for deliveries. I pause, listening. Inside, I can hear the faint clatter of dishes, the hum of a commercial refrigerator, the murmur of voices. I reach for the keypad mounted beside the door. 0-9-2-2. The girl's birthday. September 22nd. The keypad beeps, a tiny, digital heartbeat, and the lock yields with a soft mechanical click. I pull the door open and slip inside. The belly of the beast. The scent of catering prep, roasted garlic, fresh herbs, industrial lemon polish, is thick in the air. I bypass the kitchen, moving quickly but quietly through the narrow hallway that leads to the basement stairs. The caterers are too busy to notice me. A woman in a white chef's coat is plating canapés, her hands moving with assembly line efficiency. A young man is wrestling with a crate of champagne bottles, the glass clinking softly. I reach the basement door and pull it open, slipping through before anyone can turn around. The stairwell is narrow and dark, the walls bare concrete. The air smells like mildew and old cardboard. I descend slowly, one hand on the railing, my eyes adjusting to the dim light from the single overhead bulb. At the bottom of the stairs, there are 3 doors. Wine cellar. Storage closet. Server room. The server room door is on the left, a simple residential lock with a cheap brass handle. Brian's first mistake. I pull 2 steel knitting needles from the sleeve of my cardigan. Size 8 needles, bamboo core wrapped in steel casing, sharp enough to pierce yarn and strong enough to manipulate a tumbler lock. I've spent 40 years fixing things that were broken. A residential lock is just another puzzle. I slide the first needle into the keyhole, feeling for the pins. I insert the second needle as a tension wrench, applying gentle rotational pressure. I feel the first pin give way with a satisfying, metallic click. Then the second. Then the third. The lock turns. I push the door open and step inside. The room is small, barely larger than a walk-in closet. The walls are lined with server racks, their blinking green lights casting an eerie glow across the concrete floor. The air hums with the mechanical breath of cooling fans, and the scent of ozone is sharp in my nostrils. It's the only honest room in the house. Here, everything is reduced to binary truth. Ones and zeros. Data that doesn't lie. The server rack glows like a constellation, each blinking light a star in Brian's digital universe. I find the drive labeled TFS_backup and crouch down in front of it. My hands are steady as I pull the Kingston thumb drive from my cardigan pocket and plug it into the USB port on the front panel. The screen on the server monitor flickers to life. A file directory appears, folders labeled with clinical precision. Blue_marble_LTD. Macau_wire_transfers. Client_portfolio_overrides. Sterling_partnership_docs. I am harvesting the evidence of his collapse. I select all. I drag the folders to the thumb drive icon. The progress bar appears, crawling across the screen with agonizing slowness. 5%. 12%. 23%. Each file is a nail in the coffin of his new money lifestyle. Each transaction is a line item in the ledger of his ruin. I watch the percentage climb, 60%. 75%. 80%, and I feel the cold, crystalline rush of professional victory. The auditor has found the fraud. 90%. 95%. A file at the bottom of the directory catches my eye. GT_evaluation_final.pdf. My initials. GT, Grace Thornton. I double-click the file, my pulse quickening. The PDF opens, and my heart stops. It's a psychiatric evaluation report, printed on official letterhead from Serenity Ridge Behavioral Health Center. The date at the top is tomorrow's date. March 14th. But it's already signed. Patient, Grace Thornton, DOB June 12, 1955. Evaluating physician, Dr. Helena Aristone, MD. Diagnosis, major neurocognitive disorder with behavioral disturbance. I scroll down, my eyes racing over the clinical language. Patient exhibits dangerously delusional ideation, including paranoid beliefs regarding family members. Water-based fixations observed, flooding incidents, obsessive hydration rituals. Patient is incapable of self-care and poses a risk to herself and others. Recommend immediate involuntary commitment under Connecticut General Statutes Section 17A, 495. Brian didn't wait for the evaluation. He bought it. He's already paved the road to the asylum with falsified medical records and pre-signed commitment orders. The clinical coldness of the text is more terrifying than his grip on my wrist ever was. I am being erased on paper before I can be erased in person. The file transfer completes. 100%. The thumb drive icon blinks. I eject the drive and shove it back into my pocket. Thud. 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 The sound cuts through the hum of the servers like a blade. Heavy, rhythmic footsteps. Italian leather loafers on hardwood floorboards. Directly above me. Brian. He's in the home office on the first floor, the room directly overhead. The sound is muffled but unmistakable. A predatory pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. I freeze, my hand hovering over the server rack. The server fans seem to grow louder, a mechanical roar that fills the tiny room. My breathing sounds like a hurricane in my own ears. If he comes down here, if he decides to grab a bottle of wine from the cellar next door, I am finished. I hold my breath until my lungs burn, listening to the house breathe around me. The footsteps continue. Thud. 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 I count the beats. 10 steps to the window. 10 steps back to the desk. He's agitated. Stressed. On the phone, probably, pacing while he talks. I press my back against the server rack, the metal cold through the fabric of my cardigan, and I wait. The footsteps stop. I hear a muffled shout. Damn it. The sound of a desk drawer slamming. Hard. The glass rattle of something heavy hitting wood. He's still upstairs. I move. I yank the thumb drive from my pocket and shove it deep into the lining of my knitting bag, pushing it through the secret seam until I feel it settle against the plastic stiffener. I slip out of the server closet, closing the door behind me with a soft click. I press my back against the cold stone wall of the basement, my heart hammering so hard I can feel it in my throat. I move up the stairs, one step at a time, testing each board before I commit my weight. At the top, I peer through the crack in the door. Brian is in the office, his back to me, hunched over his phone. His shoulders are tense, his free hand raking through his thinning hair. I slide into the shadows of the hallway and tuck myself behind the heavy velvet drapes of the library, the fabric smelling of dust and old cigar smoke. Brian's voice cuts through the silence, sharp and desperate. I don't care about the SEC. I reach into my cardigan pocket and pull out my phone, the one Stacy confiscated, the one I stole back from her purse during the recipe card visit to the kitchen. I swipe to the voice recorder app. I hit the red button. Recording. I hold the phone toward the gap in the curtains, angling it toward the office. Brian's voice is clear, tight with desperation. I moved the sterling funds to the Macau account to cover the spread. It's a temporary loan. Once the Blue Marble sale closes, the books will be clean. No one will ever know. There it is. The confession. The unauthorized borrowing that sends men in bespoke suits to federal prison for wire fraud and securities violations. I have him. I have the files. I have the recording. I have the truth. I just have to get back to the guest house. I step out from behind the curtain, moving quickly toward the service entrance. The lights in the foyer snap on, blindingly bright. I freeze, my eyes adjusting to the sudden glare. Stacy is standing in the center of the foyer, her arms crossed over her cashmere sweater. Her expression isn't surprised. It's expectant. Like she's been waiting. Wandering again, Grace? And in the library, of all places. Her voice is a serrated edge, sharp enough to draw blood. Behind her, Brian emerges from the office, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and relief. His eyes lock onto me, then drop to the knitting bag on my shoulder. I try to tuck it behind my hip, but I'm too slow. My hands are shaking. Not from the performance this time. From fear. Stacy lunges. She moves with a speed that belies her yoga-toned frame, her manicured nails digging into the strap of my knitting bag. She wrenches it from my shoulder with a sharp, violent tug. The strap snaps with a loud pop, and I stumble backward, my hip slamming into the console table. Stacy dumps the contents of the bag onto the marble floor. Wool spills out in a cascade of soft blue. Knitting needles clatter and roll. Recipe cards scatter like leaves. And the black thumb drive skitters across the polished marble, spinning in a slow arc, stopping at Brian's feet. He picks it up, turning it over in his hand. His eyes narrow as he looks from the drive to the basement door to me. The silence in the foyer is heavy, suffocating. My poker face shatters. You just couldn't stay in your room, could you? Brian's voice is soft. A whisper. But it's laced with something cold and final. He looks at Stacy, and something unspoken passes between them. The water incident. The break-in. The theft of proprietary data. He ticks off each item on his fingers, his tone clinical, detached. She's a danger to herself and this family. Stacy nods, her eyes devoid of pity. The facility has a bed ready tonight, Brian. We don't need to wait for the morning evaluation. We'll tell the girls she had an episode and needed professional help. They are moving the clock forward. The trap isn't just closing. It's snapping shut. I open my mouth to speak, but no sound comes out. They march me back to the guest house, one on each arm, their grips firm but not bruising. Professional. Clinical. The security guard is gone. The water has been cleaned up. The rugs have been replaced. The room has been reset like a stage between acts. Stacy forces a cup of tea into my hands. Drink, Grace. It will help with the confusion. The tea smells like chamomile and something else. Something metallic. Chemical. I look down at the pale liquid, watching the steam rise. I am stripped of the drive. My phone. My hope. My hands are trembling as I lift the cup to my lips. The sedative begins to cloud my thoughts almost immediately, a thick fog rolling in from the edges of my vision. I sink into the armchair, the teacup slipping from my fingers, spilling onto the rug. I realize, with a cold, terrible clarity, that I am at the bottom. I am holding a recipe for a life that is no longer mine. Stacy watches me like a predator tracking wounded prey. I bring the porcelain cup to my lips, my hands trembling just enough to sell the performance. The tea smells like chamomile and something else, something bitter and medicinal that coats the back of my throat. Haldol, probably. Or Ativan. Something meant to turn my brain into oatmeal, to make me pliable and quiet and legally incompetent. I take a long, deliberate swallow, tilting the cup back, letting the liquid touch my lips. But I don't drink. I hold the tea in my cheek, the way I used to hold wine at business dinners when I needed to stay sharp while everyone else got sloppy. The chemical taste is bitter, metallic, wrong. Stacy is still watching, her eyes fixed on my throat, waiting to see the swallow. Then her phone buzzes. She glances down at the screen, and her attention fractures for just a second. She turns slightly, walking toward the smoke detector mounted on the ceiling, adjusting its angle with her fingertips. I lean forward, letting my head droop like I'm about to pass out, and I spit the liquid into the thick, dark soil of the potted silk ficus beside my chair. The tea soaks into the fake dirt, disappearing into the decorative pebbles. I wipe my mouth with the back of my hand, letting my fingers tremble. I let my eyelids droop, my breathing go slow and shallow. I need them to believe the quieting has begun. I need them to stop looking for a fight. Stacy turns back to me, satisfied. She takes the empty cup from my hands and sets it on the side table. There. That's better. Just rest now, Grace. She smooths my hair like I'm a child, her touch clinical and cold. Then she leaves, locking the door behind her. The sun begins to bleed through the screwed-shut windows, the light thin and gray, the color of institutional hallways. I wait until my pulse steadies. Until the fog of panic clears. Then I reach into my cardigan pocket. The thumb drive is gone. Brian has it. But I still have something else. A recipe card. 3 by 5 inches. Cream-colored cardstock. The kind you buy in bulk at office supply stores. On the front, in my perfect, traditional cursive handwriting, I've written Bordeaux chocolate cake. Preheat oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. But on the back, in an accountant's cipher, a shorthand of digits and symbols I developed 40 years ago to track my husband's fraud, I've recorded the remote server's IP address and the administrative override password I glimpsed on a yellow sticky note attached to Brian's server rack. 224.68.3.101. Admin, Sterling 1987. It's a recipe for Brian's total exposure. I've spent my life keeping secrets from men who didn't deserve them. Today, I am going to be the most expensive leak in Connecticut history. I tuck the card back into my pocket and close my eyes. A black sedan, polished to a mirror shine, rolls up the gravel driveway. I watch from the window, my face pressed close to the glass, hidden behind the silk curtain. The car is a Mercedes S-Class. Matte black. The kind that costs more than most people's houses. The driver's door opens, and a man steps out. Mr. Arthur Sterling. The whale. He's in his late 60s, tall and lean, with silver hair combed straight back and a navy suit that fits like it was made by a Seville Row tailor. He moves with the unhurried confidence of a man who has never had to ask for anything twice. I know his reputation. Old school ethics. New world ruthlessness. He doesn't invest in scandals. He doesn't tolerate fraud. And he certainly doesn't waste his time on failing firms run by desperate men. I watch as Brian emerges from the house, his smile wide and bright, his hand extended. The handshake looks desperate even from 50 yards away. Brian's grip lingers too long. His shoulders are tight. His laugh is too loud. He's selling a dream of stability while the woman who managed his father's sins is locked in his backyard. The irony is a cold, sharp tonic. I adjust my pearls one last time, feeling the weight of them against my collarbone. The stage is set. The afternoon air is filled with the polite clinking of glassware and the low hum of wealthy conversation. I can hear it through the walls. Laughter. The soft pop of champagne corks. The murmur of financial small talk, dividend yields, real estate markets, tax shelters. I move to the guest house lamp, the one on the side table beside the armchair. I pull the small paring knife from my cardigan sleeve, the one I swiped from the kitchen during my recipe card visit. The blade is short, serrated, designed for peeling fruit. I kneel beside the lamp and use the knife to shave the insulation off the electrical cord, exposing the copper wiring beneath. My hands are steady. Precise. I've spent 40 years working with numbers, but before that, I grew up in a house where you fix things yourself or they stayed broken. I cross the wires, positive to negative, and plug the cord into the wall socket. Pop. A flash of blue-white light erupts from the outlet. The smell of scorched plastic fills the room, acrid and sharp. The lamp flickers once, twice, and dies. The circuit breaker trips, plunging the guest house into shadow. It's my starting gun. I take a breath. I let it out slowly. Then I open my mouth and scream. The static. It's in the walls. It's screaming. My voice is a jagged, terrifying sound that tears through the manicured piece of the estate. It's the sound of a woman who has lost her mind, who is hearing voices in the electrical hum, who is unraveling in real time. I wrench the back door open, the guard is at the mixer, thinking I'm drugged and docile, and I sprint toward the lawn. My hair comes loose from its pins, a silver mess streaming behind me. My cardigan is unbuttoned, flapping open. One of my slippers falls off, and I leave it behind. I look like the nightmare every child of a wealthy parent fears, the sudden, public descent into senility. I burst onto the lawn, a wild-eyed specter in silk and pearls, running straight toward the center of the crowd. I don't just run. I wreck. I stumble into a catering table, my hips slamming into the white-clothed edge. The impact sends a mountain of shrimp cocktail, lemon wedges, and 50 crystal champagne flutes crashing to the grass. Glass shatters. Ice scatters. Shrimp bounce across the lawn like grotesque hail. The crowd gasps, pulling back in a wave of horrified fascination. I spin, my eyes wild, my hands clawing at the air. The accounts are bleeding. I scream at a woman in a Chanel suit and pearls. She recoils, her champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. 224.68. The Macau wire. Don't let the water in. I'm shouting the IP address and the transaction codes under the guise of madness, embedding the evidence in the chaos. Brian's face turns the color of ash. He lunges for me, his hands outstretched, but I slip through the crowd like water, weaving between the horrified elite in their designer suits and silk dresses. Sterling 1987. I howl, pointing at no one and everyone. The override. The forgery. The bonds that never existed. People are pulling out their phones. Some are filming. Others are backing away, their faces twisted in shock and pity. This is what they'll remember. This is what they'll testify to. A woman unfit to sign a birthday card, let alone a multi-million-dollar trust. Brian and Stacy finally corner me near the fountain, their hands grabbing my arms with bruising force. I forged them. I howl, throwing my head back, making sure my voice carries across the lawn. I forged the guardianship papers. I'm not Grace. I'm a ghost in a ledger. I'm the woman in the numbers. I see Mr. Sterling, standing 20 feet away, watching with clinical distaste. His champagne glass is frozen halfway to his lips. By confessing to a crime I didn't commit in a state of obvious psychosis, I've just poisoned the well. Any document I've signed, the trust transfer, the house sale, the guardianship petition, is now legally toxic. No notary in the state will touch Brian's authority after this performance. Brian's grip tightens on my arm. Mother, please. I jerk away from him, stumbling forward. Straight toward Mr. Sterling. In the struggle, I stumble hard against Mr. Sterling, my body colliding with his. My hand goes to his breast pocket, the move as swift and practiced as a card shark palming an ace. I tuck the recipe card deep into his blazer, my fingers brushing the silk lining. I lean in close, my lips near his ear, and I whisper in a voice that is suddenly stone cold and lucid. The Bordeaux cake recipe, Arthur. The password is the year you lost your first firm. I pull back, my eyes going wide and vacant again, my mouth slack. Sterling freezes. His hand goes to his pocket, feeling the edge of the card through the fabric. He looks at me, really looks at me, and I see the moment of recognition in his eyes. He isn't a fool. He's built an empire on reading people, on spotting liars and frauds. He knows the difference between a crazy woman and a whistleblower. Get her out of here. Brian's voice cracks, high and desperate. He's shouting at the security guard, at Stacy, at anyone who will listen. But the damage is surgical. Precise. 50 witnesses have just seen a woman who is clearly, undeniably unfit to manage her own affairs, let alone sign legally binding documents. The legal mechanisms Brian used to trap me are now the very things that will void his theft. As the ambulance he called pulls up the gravel drive, lights flashing but no siren, I see Mr. Sterling walking toward his car. He's not running. He's not panicking. He's moving with the calm, deliberate purpose of a man who has just been handed a loaded gun. The recipe card is already in his hand. He's not leaving because of the scene. He's leaving to call his lawyers. The facility was a brief, 2-week stay. White walls. Quiet hallways. Nurses who spoke in soft, professional tones. I played the part. I took the pills they gave me, real ones, this time, mild sedatives that didn't cloud my mind. I attended the group therapy sessions. I knitted a scarf for one of the nurses. I was the model patient. Confused but cooperative. Fragile but recovering. And while I sat in a quiet room with a view of a courtyard garden, Mr. Sterling's private investigators were verifying their recipe. They accessed the server. They found the Macau wire transfers, the embezzlement, the falsified client reports, the shell companies. They pulled the threads, and Brian's entire empire unraveled. The IRS raided Thornton Financial on a Tuesday morning. Federal agents in windbreakers, carrying boxes of files and hard drives. The psychiatric evaluation Brian bought, the one with Dr. Aristone's signature, was shredded the moment Sterling's lawyers threatened the doctor with a racketeering suit and medical board complaints. I watched the news from my room, the small TV mounted on the wall tuned to the local station. Breaking, Thornton Financial assets seized. Local advisor charged with grand larceny, wire fraud, securities violations. Brian's face filled the screen, grainy footage of him being led out of his office in handcuffs. His empire didn't just fall. It evaporated. Stacy filed for divorce before the first bail hearing was over. She moved to Florida with the girls, claiming she'd been deceived by a sociopathic spouse. I walk into the downtown bank on a Tuesday morning in April, my posture upright, my silver bob perfectly coiffed. I'm wearing a navy suit and my pearls. My hands are steady. The bank manager greets me with a cautious smile. I'm no longer the confused senior locked in a guest house. I'm a client with a safety deposit box and a very specific request. I present the key I kept sewn into the hem of my cardigan for 30 years. A small brass key, tarnished with age. The manager leads me to the vault, and I retrieve the box. Inside, cash. Bearer bonds. Stock certificates in companies that have nothing to do with the Thornton name. My husband was a fraud, yes. But I was the one who made sure there was always a clean reserve of money that never touched a Thornton ledger. It's the money the dutiful wife kept for her own retirement. The emergency fund no one knew existed. It's more than enough to buy back a certain craftsman home from the bankruptcy auction. I sit in my old kitchen, the one with the creaky third step and the garden that needs weeding. The house smells like lemon polish and fresh paint. The counters are clean. The windows are open, letting in the spring air. The locks are new, heavy, reinforced deadbolts that I installed myself. No one is getting in here without my permission. Not ever again. I pour a glass of 1990 Bordeaux, the color of a bruised plum, into a crystal wine glass. I hold it up to the light, watching the way the liquid catches the sun. The phone on the counter begins to ring. I glance at the caller ID. Hartford County Jail, collect call. I don't move. I don't even reach for the receiver. I listen to the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, the same clock that's been in this kitchen for 40 years. The phone rings once. Twice. 3 times. Then it stops. I take a sip of the Bordeaux. It's perfect. Smooth, rich, with notes of dark cherry and tobacco. The audit is over. I am Grace Thornton, and I am finally home. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?